Welcome to Part 2 of the Access Center training. In the Part 1, we covered ADA law and the basic definition for accommodations. In Part 2, we're going to cover what are the policies and procedures for accommodations at NSCC. We're going to cover accommodation letters, accommodated testing process, as well as access meetings. Accommodation letters. For those of you who have received an email from the Access Center, you're familiar with these letters. For those that are new, I'd like to go over what these letters contain. On the screen is an image example of an accommodation letter. This accommodation letter is for Biology 2010 Anatomy and Physiology. The first section defines the purpose of the letter and emphasizes the confidentiality of the information. It also introduces the student and provides their A number. The second part of this letter asks the instructor to reach out to the student to discuss accommodations and encourages communication with the Access Center. Our contact information is provided. The Access Center main number is 615-353-3721. My number is 615-353-3294. When the student completes their application and interview and provides medical documentation to the Access Center, once they are approved for accommodations, we send out this letter. This letter acts as a communication by the student. So the next step is for the instructor to reach out to the student to discuss how these accommodations will be implemented in the specific class. If you have any issues with reaching your student or getting this meeting scheduled, you are welcome to contact the Access Center and we can be of assistance. Oftentimes, an email is a great way to connect with the student confidentially. Now on the letter, we're going to go into the alternative testing element. Communication is very important between instructors, students, and the testing center staff, as well as the Access Center staff. This section explains where to access the required proctor form that must be completed by instructors and submitted to the testing center. On this part of the letter, we provide the link to the ADA proctor form. I will review this form later in this video. Specific accommodations are detailed in bold in the next sections, and these cover the testing center accommodations. So for example, a student may qualify for extra time, time and a half, 1.5, or the student may qualify for flexible testing dates. For accommodations such as these, we provide descriptions to give a little bit more information about the structure of these accommodations. For example, for flexible testing dates, the accommodation ensures extended time can be provided within the testing center hours and course schedule hours. It also applies to a disability-related barrier which prevented the student from testing on the same day as the rest of the class. The student must communicate with the professor as proactively as possible when this accommodation is needed. While we do ask instructors to reach out to students to discuss accommodations, it is very important that I point out that we also express to students how important it is that they are communicating with their instructors and in communicating about their accommodation needs. So we've looked at an example of testing accommodations. You'll notice that it's sectioned into testing accommodations and classroom. An example of a classroom access accommodation includes permission to audio record. So for students that need to auditorily listen to what was discussed in class after the class meeting. Please note the short descriptions following each accommodation. If a customized note is indicated, it will appear below with more information. So for example, flexible assignment deadlines will be specified in the next section. So let's take a look at this. Additional notifications. For the student that qualified for flexible assignment deadlines, This, for this student, meant 48-hour extension when the student discusses this with the instructor in advance of the due date. Now, this is unless the medical issue prevents a student from discussing this extension in advance. If the student and/or instructor has any concerns about this extension, he or she may contact the Access Center to coordinate a meeting between the student, instructor, and Access Center coordinator to discuss a plan. We do encourage that students are proactive about discussing their needs, and we encourage communication as well. This accommodation applies to all courses, including Web Online and including hybrid courses. This extension applies to 48 hours in addition to whatever the deadline was for the rest of the class. At the bottom of the accommodation letter, please note that there are important links for access to resources like guidelines and the online learning resources. Please take a moment to explore these resources. The Access Center has outlined the guidelines for responsibilities for the faculty, Access Center staff, and students. There is also a link to Online Learning's wonderful resources about making course content accessible, and there also are some great resources to help instructors that are having issues with D2L. Accommodation letters continued. Let's talk a little bit about the faculty portal. You will receive a letter when a student has an accommodation in your class. That's how you will be notified that a student requires an accommodation. You will receive an email. If you need to look this information up at a later date, these are the steps that you need to follow. So say, for example, we as an institution have a day where perhaps we have lost our previous emails. Please note that if you have internet access, you are able to access any information on a student in your class related to accommodation information by following these steps. From the home page, www.nscc.edu, click on Current Students. Then you click on On-Campus Resources, and then find and click Access Center. On the far right side of the page, there are 3 green boxes. The first box will have a link that says Accessible Learning. Click here to access AIM. Click on the words Faculty Login and put in your My NSCC information. You will be taken to a disclosure page. Click where it says Continue to view student accommodations. Let me show you a bit of what this will look like. If you start off at nscc.edu and you go to Current Students, Access Center, these are the 3 green boxes that we were talking about, and you click on Accessible Learning. And this is the website for Accessible Learning. AIM stands for Accessible Information Management. And on the far right, there'll be a link for faculty login. Now, I'm unable to log in as a faculty, but this is where you'll go. All right. Let's talk about the accommodated testing process. First, let's talk about how the process should flow. Step 1 is that a student makes an ADA testing appointment 2 full business days in advance in AIM, or by calling the Access Center. Access Center coordinates with the testing center to set up approved testing accommodation space. The instructor will receive an email from Access, and this will include testing information as well as the testing location. So this is going to be your notification about when the student wants to test, what time, and at what testing center location. This will go to the NSCC email for the instructor. If another email is preferred, please reach out to the Access Center so that we can update your faculty login information. After you receive this email, we ask that you please submit the ADA faculty cover form And that is linked again here. This is also on the accommodation letter of where to find these forms. And we ask that you submit this ADA faculty cover form and the test to the appropriate campus testing center in advance of the testing appointment. Step 5 is that the student shows up for their exam and they take their test with their valid ID. So let's look at how to find this form. As a faculty member, you'll go to the nscc.edu website. You'll click on Faculty and Staff, and you'll scroll until you get to Testing. The last two links under the Testing area have ADA Faculty Cover Form and ADA Faculty Cover Form Web Online Courses for web-based tests only. This web-based test only form is quite a bit shorter. So let's take a look at the ADA faculty cover form that is typical for on-ground tests, which could include paper tests or online tests, but these are for courses that occur on ground in the classroom. This is an example of the ADA proctor form. On the first page, you'll see a section where you can put the student's name and A number. You'll give information on the type of test that it is, and you'll provide information about your course, when the test is open and when it closes, and also your first and last name in the semester. It's very important that you as the instructor fill out the total time limit for the exam. While a student may be granted extended time, we can only apply that extended time once we know what the standard time is for the exam. For example, if your exams are normally 2 hours and a student has time and a half, they will receive 3 hours. So please write 180 minutes to indicate the total 3-hour time period. Page 2 of this form discusses testing aids that are allowed. So any testing aids that any student would be allowed to have on your exam, including any calculators, notes, formula sheets. Please indicate if scratch paper is allowed and if these items need to be returned with the test. Part 3, if there is a password for this test, please ensure that you give that information on this form so we can ensure the student gets on their test. Please also indicate the test domain, whether it's D2L, Pearson, etc. Please let us know if Lockdown Browser is required and follow the steps in D2L to ensure Lockdown Browser is activated. The last page of this form is where you will give us your contact information. This is very important if we need to reach you if there's an issue with the test or if more information is needed. Please put the most up-to-date contact information that will allow us to reach you. We also provide the email addresses for all the satellite campuses as well as main campus. If you would like for someone else to pick up the test, you can indicate that as well. And this is the form that needs to be submitted to the testing center with the appropriate test if it's a paper test. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the testing process, accommodated testing process. A couple of reminders: please ensure that the proctor form is submitted to the correct campus testing center. Please remember to set testing timers in D2L or other formats to ensure the student receives the appropriate extended time. Please ensure Lockdown Browser is appropriately set up in D2L if applicable. Also, please ensure the proctor form includes any important information such as password, total testing time, verified accommodations, as well as your contact information. Here are the satellite campus contacts. We have Dixon, Clarksville, Waverly, East Davison, and Southeast. These are the email addresses for the satellite campuses so that you know where to send the proctor form and the exam. You are very welcome to CC Access Center at nscc.edu if you would like us to have access to this information. Please be aware that when you submit the ADA proctor form to the testing centers, the Access Center does not have access to this information. When you receive an email from Access indicating a student has made a testing appointment, if there are any issues that you see with this testing appointment, please be sure to notify the Access Center. All right, let's talk about Access meetings. Accommodations are individualized and are an interactive process. Access meetings are meetings between a faculty member and the Access Center, or includes the faculty member, Access Center, and the student. These meetings serve to clarify accommodations, reiterate student and faculty responsibility, and to provide support as well. If you have any questions or concerns about any accommodations, please contact the Access Center. We want to be of support. We want to make sure that you understand what's expected. We also want to be available if a student wants to discuss an assignment or an issue in the course and the Access Center needs to be involved. Please stay tuned for the next section, Supports in the Classroom.